Welcome to Indivisible Plymouth's podcast, The Participation Project, where curiosity and honest conversations help you stay informed, get involved, and participate in the decisions that affect our communities. Today's guest is Alex Rikleen. Alex is a former history teacher, and he is a recent former Democratic United States Senate candidate, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm really excited to have you on, Alex. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So you and I talked about how you dropped out of the race, and I'm sure I can't even imagine running for office and how much work that is. And then just to get your name out so people recognize you and know who you are, to even choose you on a ballot, and all the signatures you have to get. Like, what was the hardest part for you?
You know, it was a series of very difficult steps. Like you said, it's incredibly difficult. I would drop my kids off at school every morning. I'd get home, I'd grab a bite to eat, and then I would pretty much be working nonstop until I fell asleep after midnight.
Working
every single day. I'd work
7 days a week.
7 days a week, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was my life for a year.
Well, thank you for running, because, you know, even though the goal of being a United States Senator didn't happen, you still have moved the conversation forward for many people. And so I definitely appreciate you for that. And like I said, I'm really happy and excited that you're here. I'm excited to learn from a history teacher. And, well, you know, in high school, it can be a little wah-wah, like the Charlie Brown. You know, at least it was for me. But now that I'm in this situation that we're in with the federal government, you know, now I'm trying to pay attention a little more. I wanted to talk about the courts, the federal courts, since we're in this situation with the federal government, and there are lots of things that are happening that are against the law, right? And so many of the GOP, Senate and House of Representatives, most of them seem to be following in line, and even if that means breaking the law or whatever.
Sure.
So it's like the courts are our last line of defense for making sure that our democracy holds. Mm-hmm. And you told me that you thought it was really important that we should ask every single candidate how they feel about expanding the courts. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that? Sure.
And, you know, and I think that this is one of the things that, like you said, the campaign was able to increase the salience of this issue in the state. And I am glad for that. I think that we have, especially on the Supreme Court, we have a real crisis right now where the current Supreme Court majority, it meets every classical historical definition of a captured partisan and authoritarian Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. We're not the first country to have one of those. We can look at examples around the world and say that what's happening here meets all of the classic
Give me a couple
checkpoints.
Examples.
The composition was created through arbitrary rules inconsistently applied. Okay. So when Justice Scalia died, Mitch McConnell created a brand new policy that he claimed was a rule, that we weren't going to appoint a new judge, quote, so close to the election.
I remember this.
Yeah.
Oh, we've been so traumatized that it's hard to remember.
As a result, Republicans changed the number of judges on the court for a year. We went from 9 judges to 8 for an entire year because of a partisan decision made by the Republican Party. And then once a Republican was president, they allowed President Trump to appoint a new judge. And so they went back from 8 judges to 9. But that policy that Mitch McConnell invented that was not consistent with what had happened previously, he threw it out at the end of Trump's first term in 2020 when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and he was rushed through Amy Coney Barrett's appointment in the weeks before an election, after early voting had already begun in some places.
Oh, that's right, too. So he could get in another judge before Trump maybe left office.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you have the current composition was created through arbitrary rules inconsistently applied. That is a classic feature of authoritarian partisan courts. You also have a feature of the current composition of the court where many members of the court lied during their confirmation hearings. They said that Roe versus Wade was settled law.
Yes.
And then they overturned it. It's just
It leaves you speechless.
It's just a complete reversal.
Yeah.
It does not meet the current American legal definition of bribery, but you have what appears to be bribery, especially in the case of Justice Thomas and the hundreds of millions of dollars of, quote, gifts that he has accepted, including from people who have business from before the courts. So there is this sort of corruption angle. And then you have these series of decisions that the only consistent theme is partisanship.
Okay, now wait a minute, because the Supreme Court has on several occasions voted against or ruled against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they're not that bad.
So that is, they are so much worse than that. A court siding against the authoritarian ruler is a common staple of an authoritarian court. That is something that happens all around the world. And it's important to look at not just the final ruling, but how they get there. Mm-hmm. And so an example is, it seems as though in the coming days or weeks, the court is going to, quote, rule against Trump on the birthright citizenship case. Mm-hmm. Yep. And you are going to have a lot of people come out and say, look at how independent this court is. Yep. It rebuked Trump. Isn't that great? You know, Democrats are just overreacting.
That's a bone he threw us.
But what's actually happening is the final decision the court is using to try and prop up its own legitimacy. But this case is about basic reading comprehension. The entire premise of this case is about the very words on the page. This case should not have been heard at the Supreme Court. This case should have been thrown out every step of the way. Yeah. For the court to have allowed it to come to them, for them to have allowed a hearing, for them to have allowed it to go on for months and months, allowed this ambiguity to occur. They have helped Trump to shift the Overton window on a very basic, straightforward, easy constitutional question. Mm-hmm. They also used this exact case as a vehicle to help the Trump administration in other ways. They used this birthright citizenship case as a vehicle to try and get rid of nationwide injunctions, which is something they had no problem with when they were.
Can you explain that a little bit? And then just for maybe some listeners, the birthright citizenship is everyone who's born in the United States via our Constitution is automatically a citizen of the United States.
Yes.
But the Trump administration, this is the case they're bringing against them, trying to get rid of that. And I don't know who they would consider citizens.
This isn't legalese. This is, you could put the Reconstruction amendments in front of a third grader and they would be able to figure this out.
Yes.
This is really a straightforward question. And so a nationwide injunction is when a court that is below the Supreme Court says this law is so obviously illegal that I am not just stopping it in my area, I am stopping it nationwide. Mm-hmm. I am not waiting for the Supreme Court to rule. Even though I only have jurisdiction over New England or over Texas or whatever, I am going to say that this law is so bad that I am stopping it nationwide.
So is that what he tried to do?
That is something that has been a pretty normal practice throughout history, and that conservative judges used against the Biden administration all the time. This Supreme Court used the birthright citizenship case as the vehicle to say, actually, we're not going to allow district courts to issue nationwide injunctions to stop the Trump administration. Nationwide injunctions, even though they were fine when they were used against a Democratic president, they are no longer okay. So this case that is probably going to be decided correctly on the merits. Mm-hmm. It is going to be used to prop up the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. It is used to move the Overton window to help Trump. And it has already been used to make it harder for district courts to stop abuses of power from the Trump administration. It's one of those, it is a perfect example of the court is atrocious. And even when they look like they are siding against the Trump administration, when you look at how they're siding against the Trump administration, when you look at what they're doing to get there, it's really, really bad. And there is not an ounce of legitimacy to this current Supreme Court majority.
Holy moly.
A really, really important and good example of this is what's been going on with voting rights over the last couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
So a couple of years ago, Alabama, they created new racist maps to have 6 Republican congressional seats and 1 Democratic seat.
Okay, can you just explain how that usually typically works for carving up districts for voting?
Every 10 years, we have a census. After the census, we have to come up with new maps. That's standard practice forever.
And in the census, it says, we have so many Hispanic people, so many people who identify as white, so many people that identify as black, whatever.
Supposed to be a counting of everyone. And we use that information to say, all right, Massachusetts, we lost a congressional rep, and Alabama, you gained one, or whatever. And
to represent each of those communities,
correct.
Of all the communities.
Correct. And then you use that data to draw new maps. Mm-hmm. Alabama, in 2020, used that information. They had to draw new maps. The new maps they drew deliberately tried to undermine the black vote share in Alabama.
How can they do that?
Well, they couldn't up until 2014, when the conservatives on the court tried to, in their first attempt at overruling the Voting Rights Act. So there was a ruling in 2014 that really hacked away a lot of the Voting Rights Act. And then the ruling last month just got rid of everything that was left.
Because that said you can carve up the districts however you want.
So up until 2014, a state like Alabama, which had such a history of institutional racism, had to get pre-clearance.
Pre-clearance.
They had to get anything that they wanted to do election-wise. They had to get approval because they had such a track record of trying to disenfranchise minorities. But Obama won, so John Roberts decided that, don't you know, racism is solved now.
Right, because we had a black president.
Right. That's quite literally the logic of that ruling. Yeah. So the rules changed between the 2010 redistricting cycle and the 2020 redistricting cycle, and so Alabama drew more racist maps. But even under the new rules, that map was deemed too racist to be allowed. However, even though the Supreme Court, the 6 members who currently make up the Supreme Court majority, they acknowledged that this map was too racist, but that what they ruled 4 years ago, was that this map is too racist to be used. However, we are making this decision too close to the election to change it for 2022.
Are you kidding me?
And so you can go through with it this time, but you have to change it for next time.
Oh.
They made that decision in February. This year, in the same state of Alabama, in May, when it's going in the other direction, when it's going from, instead of 6 Republicans to 5 Republicans, now when they want to draw a map that changes it from 5 Republicans to 6, they're allowing that in May, even closer to the election.
Even closer.
They're saying the thing we said a couple of years ago where February was too close to the election, that doesn't apply anymore. Now May is not too close to the election. The court is completely inconsistent in its application of rules. It's completely inconsistent in its how it uses precedent. It's completely inconsistent in any sense of guiding principles. And so you have a court that is making decisions not based on law, not based on precedent, not based on history, that was acquired through rules inconsistently applied. That is all that's the checklist.
For an authoritarian.
A partisan captured an authoritarian court. And so what I was saying to you in our conversation before we started was, if you are a Democrat running for office and you want Medicare for all and you want to regulate the AI companies and you want to break up monopolies, you want to protect labor rights, whatever classically left of center policies you're running on, whether they're moderate policies or pretty liberal policies, pretty progressive, however you want to label it. If you cannot recognize that the Supreme Court will stop all of that, then you have just disqualified yourself from that position. No Democrat is qualified for federal office if they do not recognize the threat posed by this court.
Okay, yeah.
And I encourage anyone listening to use this as a litmus test. If a Democrat will not commit to expanding the court, to changing the composition of this court, then they don't get it. They do not understand the reality that we live in today.
Yeah, people say that I'm an alarmist. I'm overreacting. Let's settle down, chill out, relax.
I promise you're underreacting.
Thank you. Yeah, I am. I've been trying to sound the alarm since like 2016. I lost a lot of Facebook friends too. Wow. So expanding the court to what? What would that look like? Anything or?
So the goal is not expansion for expansion's sake. The goal is a return of legitimacy to the Supreme Court. The best way to do that is to combine expansion with some other necessary reforms.
Term limits, maybe?
Term limits, an enforceable code of ethics, and a fixed appointment schedule. I think those are the
What would a fixed appointment schedule look like? Okay, like when they get appointed to.
If we say that there are, we're going to expand to 13 judges. That's what's normally what people usually recommend.
Okay.
Say, term limits are 16 years, and one of them is appointed every year, and one of them is retiring every year.
Okay, so it would rotate.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that every single year, or whether it's 3 a term or 4 a term, however you do the math.
Yeah.
The important thing is every president comes in saying, I am going to have 4 chances to appoint a Supreme Court judge. And over time, that makes sure that the composition of the court reflects the demonstrated will of the population. It also makes retaliation in the future harder. It's much harder for a candidate down the line to say, I need to add judges, when there's already a system in place whereby they know they're going to be appointing 4 members and 4 members are going to be coming off.
And that's just an automatic rolling.
It's just an automatic cycle.
Appointment cycle.
And if you have that in place, it makes it much harder for retaliation down the line. So you are creating a court that is more reflective of what people have voted for, and it makes it harder for someone to get into this cycle of expand, which some people are worried about.
Mm-hmm. I see. So it's taking those two methods.
Mm-hmm.
They're congruent, or they meld together nicely
Exactly.
as far as making things more fair.
Exactly. And then when you combine that with an enforceable code of ethics, when you combine that with clear, the Supreme Court is the only body that's responsible for just completely policing themselves. That they're the ones who say, no, I think I'm good here. And that's how you get people saying, no, I go golfing with this guy a couple times a year, but I can be unbiased when his case comes before me.
Yeah.
He, bought me a $2 million RV, but I can still decide his case. Mm-hmm. Even if a judge could be impartial in that situation.
Yeah.
For the legitimacy of the court, you've got to have the sense of you've got to have the understanding that you should be recusing yourself.
Yes.
Anyways.
Even for the optics.
Even if just for the optics. I seriously question whether you could be impartial in that circumstance.
Yeah.
But even if you could, they have lost the benefit of doubt. They have lost the right to judge for themselves on these matters.
Yeah.
And so, clear punishments for when they violate their own ethics code. They have an ethics code right now, but if they violate it, it's, who knows? Maybe John Roberts gives them a stern talking to. We don't know what happens.
Yeah.
And so I think you want that as a slate. You want a larger, you want to change the composition of the court. Mm-hmm. You could do that through impeachment and removal. That's a higher bar than expansion. There are other benefits to expansion, term limits and a fixed appointment schedule and an enforceable code of ethics.
I love it.
Yeah.
Get back in that race, Alex. Get back in that race. Oh, thank you for that lesson.
Sure.
I appreciate that.
Glad to.
So you have come out and endorsed Ed Markey.
Yes.
Over Seth Moulton.
Yes.
And could you just elaborate on why you chose that? And you told me it was a very easy decision.
It was not a hard decision. For one, Senator Markey recognizes the need to expand the court. He was the first senator to call for expanding the court.
Really?
Yes.
Cool.
There's this classic thing with the current Congress where there's so much underperformance, the bar is often low.
Yeah.
But he is the best legislator in Congress when it comes to court reform.
Wow.
That is unquestioned. I would like to see him talk about that more.
Yeah.
I think this is so important that if you're going to be the best legislator in Congress on an issue, I want to see you
sound the alarm.
I want to see you leading.
Yeah.
I want to see you talking about that more.
Yeah.
But he is on the merits the best in Congress right now on this topic, and Seth Moulton notably silent on it. Mm-hmm. So there's that. Generally speaking, on policy, I am just very close to Senator Markey and not as close to Representative Moulton.
Mm-hmm. As far as your views. And, yeah.
And there are the issues of Representative Moulton, sort of his inconsistencies. Mm-hmm. Up until he announced on October 15th, he was one of the most moderate members of the delegation from Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Since he announced, his voting record's been pretty good. I wish he was running for office before October 15th. But that inconsistency, I find alarming.
Yeah.
I want a senator who we can rely on more than that.
Yeah.
And the senator's remarks after the 2024 election were problematic on their own. Mm-hmm. and they were also representative of a larger problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the comments he made sort of throwing the trans community under the bus.
Seth Moulton did this?
Yes. So
how do you remember? This is amazing. What did he say?
So this is still in November after the 2024 election.
Okay.
He said, I believe it was to the New York Times, that I apologize if I have the quote wrong, but it was very close to, I have 2 young girls and I don't want them getting bowled over by a male or formerly male athlete.
In the athlete. Okay. Yeah. Wow, that's too bad.
And there's the problem with the statement directly and the problem with what the statement represents.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the statement directly is it's immediately following this major election, and these comments have the effect of blaming the loss on the trans community.
Mm-hmm.
The Trump-Vance campaign spent the last weeks of the election elevating their attacks on the trans community. In the immediate aftermath, you go out of your way to make that comment. You know, you're a seasoned politician. He unseated an incumbent himself when he first ran. Like, he's a talented guy. He's got to know that the impact of this is to effectively say Democrats lost because of the trans community.
Unbelievable.
That's not the words he said, but that's the effect.
Yeah.
And this is at a time when this community is feeling incredibly vulnerable. After
rightly
weeks,
so, unfortunately.
Of course, after weeks of attack, the candidate that was attacking them was just elected to the highest office in the land. And then the party that is supposed to be the party that defends them is going one of their leaders is going out of their way to say this. That is just sending a really awful message to that community.
Absolutely.
It's also wrong and misleading on the merits.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 100%.
What's the point of kids' sports? Why do we play kids' sports?
Community, fairness, supporting each other.
I did not hear you say that the point of kids' sports is to find out who the fastest 12-year-old is. Notably absent from your answer.
Yes.
Which is, I agree. If the point of kids' sports is to be instilling these lessons in kids and to be building community and friendships, then we should be encouraging that.
Inclusion. Because
of some of the other factors that go into the problems a person faces when they are trans. People who are trans participate in sports way less than average. Yeah. If someone is willing to even try, we should be welcoming that. We should be allowing that. They're trying to build a community that they desperately need.
Yeah, and the fact is that there are, I mean, I don't remember the number, but I mean, it might be like 2% of all high school athletes in the whole entire country. Way less.
Way less.
Thank you. Maybe it's 2 people. Maybe it was like that.
When Ohio passed a law banning trans people from participating in girls' sports, the law affected 1 person in the entire state of Ohio.
Yes, that's where I'm getting that number. Yeah.
Ohio is like the 7th biggest state in the country.
Only 1.
That law affected 1 person. That is the level we're talking about here.
And during a transitioning dependent, there's a lot that goes into it, and we're actually going to do a podcast on. I'm going to have some folks in the transgender community come in and we're going to chat and break that all down. But there's not as much of an advantage as people would think.
Correct.
Because hormones. They work backwards from like testosterone will help muscles get stronger and bigger, but the reverse is happening when a young person starts using hormones and things like that. So they're
There's
not
great
even
reporting on this,
physically
yeah.
stronger.
But even if they were, I've never heard anyone advocate for banning the top 3% tallest or 3% heaviest people from participating in sports.
Good point.
And you are way more likely, you random child, you're pretty likely to participate in a league with someone who is in the top 3% for height and in the top 3% for weight.
Mm-hmm.
You are very unlikely to participate in a league
Yeah.
with someone who is trans.
Mm-hmm.
So this notion that this might be about physical safety is absurdist on the face. It's
Right.
it's a lie.
Yeah.
If we were concerned about safety, if we were concerned about making sure everyone was the same height and strength and weight, then we would be making our youth sports divided by height and weight and
Yeah.
not age.
Yeah.
But that's not how we do it.
Mm-mm.
Because that's not what it's about.
It gave people something to grab onto that they could point to others and say it's their fault.
And the leaders of this movement have been open about that.
Mm-hmm.
They have been completely open about the fact that they had lost the fight on gay marriage and they were losing the fight on trans inclusion generally.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to trans participation in sports, that was something where people were still not comfortable. And that was something they could use as a wedge. And that if they started there, they could build outwards and they could reverse the gains on trans inclusion in the rest of the community and work out from there to cut back on acceptance of gay marriage. And they've been open about that from the beginning, and it is working. Yeah. It is working. In 2017, when North Carolina passed their bathroom bill, there was nationwide uproar and multiple sporting events were removed from the state in protest. In the last couple of years, a number of states have passed more restrictive laws than that, and it did not attract any popular attention. You know, obviously it attracted attention in the communities paying attention to this, but it did not attract nearly the level of uproar or pushback that 27 North Carolina bill did. And you have, going back to the court, you have not the full Supreme Court majority, but you have members of the court, Thomas and Alito, writing in opinions that they have their eyes on reversing gay marriage and that they have their eyes on reversing it sounds absurd to say, on reversing the ability on interracial marriage. I did
not know that one.
They have expressed, I don't know if that was I don't remember if that was written into an opinion or if that was verbally in an exchange.
Expressed, but the fact that it's even on any of their minds.
Loving versus Virginia, they expressed openness to the idea that was wrongly decided within the last year. I mean, this effort has been successful, and it started by choosing trans sports as a wedge issue, even though this is an issue that affects the smallest possible percentage of the population.
I get it, yeah.
And
it's really a non-issue. But they were able to use it, and people glom onto it.
It's a complete non-issue.
Fear.
And the status quo of local communities figuring it out had been okay.
Yeah.
There were less than 12 when Charlie Baker, former governor, who's now head of the NCAA, when he appeared before a congressional commission, I think it was in 2024, he said that there were less than a dozen trans athletes in the entire NCAA out of, I think I think the figure is about 3,000, maybe more, NCAA athletes total.
Wow.
There were less than a dozen. I mean, there are tiny percentage of people involved in this.
It's scary. When you really scary. When you mentioned authoritarian governments in leadership, and you mentioned that this method, this like thought of and plotted out method, there you could compare it to a number of other countries around the world. Could you give an example or two of other countries that have this type of or gotten to this point where they have or have had an authoritarian government?
Sure. I think that the best examples for what Trump is doing are sort of modernish examples with Poland, Turkey, and Russia. And Poland and Turkey, I'm not like an absolute expert on these countries, but my understanding is that Poland and Turkey in particular are pretty good examples in terms of what's happened with their courts also mirrors what's happened with our court. I think that there have been some South Central American countries as well where there were sort of similar court dynamics at play. To take this in an uplifting direction for a second.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be wrapping up soon. So.
Orban in Poland just lost. And he had been in power for decades.
Oh, yeah.
He had been in power for decades. Mm-hmm. And he had lost previous elections, but by smaller margins. And he, with the powers that he had accrued and with the corruption that he had
amassed,
tell
me, he was able to say that they were unfair.
He was able to fix it and keep power and make it look like he had won when he probably didn't. Mm-hmm. A couple of times.
Wow.
But this time around, he lost by so much that he couldn't do it. And he is now out of power.
Yes, I remember.
And even in a place like that, where you had an authoritarian leader who had fixed previous elections, mm-hmm. they were still able to overthrow him. But it took a lot of people coming out to vote. And so on some level, when people say vote harder, it kind of feels obnoxious and silly.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it can work.
Yeah.
And winning by a large enough margin is how we are going to beat this.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah, that is uplifting. I remember when that happened, and that is uplifting. Yeah. That's encouraging. That's possible.
And he's responding the way that Democrats should respond when we take power back. He is fixing the court. He is getting rid of the corrupt people on the court. He is rebalancing the court to try to make it into a legitimate institution. Wow. He is prosecuting the people who violated the law, who used the power of the office to violate the law. He is moving quickly to recognizing the reality of the situation that was and trying to establish a legitimate government. He is not trying to go back to some normal. He is not just focusing on kitchen table economics. Mm-hmm. And I think the long-term effect of that is going to have an effect on the kitchen table economics. And this is the thing that I think is missing and drives a lot of frustration amongst some Democratic voters, and some of the gap between the Democratic base and some of the people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries is, why is gas so expensive right now? Because our corrupt president illegally started a war, experienced no repercussions for it, and that war is driving up the cost of gas. Why are so many goods more expensive even before the war? Why were so many goods more expensive than they were a year before? Because of illegal tariffs. Mm-hmm. There is a direct connection between abuse of power and how it affects our day-to-day pocketbook. Yeah. And we don't have to separate those. Mm-hmm. And if we fix the rule of law and if we reestablish democratic legitimacy, we not only set up our country better and healthier for the long term, but economic stability will follow. And that's what we're seeing with Orban gone. And I think that's I'm sure there's some element of it's going to make him popular and it's going to help him politically to be doing that. But also it's going to help because it's going to help the people.
Yeah. And how the economy affects the people in, like you said, their day-to-day lives. Alex Rikleen, former Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you came and spoke with me.
A lot of fun.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the Crackerjack team at the local scene for doing the directing, editing, and all the magical stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And you can find more information about the local scene at thelocalscene.media. And I want to thank the podcast team of Indivisible Plymouth, including Phoebe Flynn, Heidi Mayo, Joanne Oscar, Shelley Rowell, Lynn Lufkin, Joe Brennan, and Sandy Cormier.
Those people are great.
Yes, they really are. They're really great. And if you want to hear more about Indivisible Plymouth or how you can get involved, you can go to indivisibleplymouth.org, where you'll see that our mission is taking positive, effective action in support of democracy and human rights, motivated by love, not hate, to push the moral arc of history. And I feel like that's what you're really working on doing, Alex. And again, thank you for running and just keeping the conversation moving forward.
Sure. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Good.
And good to be down here. Good to see you.
Awesome.